Hello and welcome to the Comfy Hub, you guys. This is exciting. I'm Vicky and that's Susie, and we're the co-founders of Comfi. For those of you who don't know that yet, we're always in everyone's face. And this is so typical of Comfy because we never follow the herd. Most people are going to be doing Valentine's Day. We're like, nah, we're going to do Valentine's month. And what better way to do it than talk about all things love? So back in the last year, we did a podcast on perimenopause and the effects it has on sleep. And then, given Susie and our sort of age and stage in life, we started to talk to, like, most of us are in our mid-40s, coming into early 50s, have been in very long-term relationships, are facing this challenge of hormonal fluctuations or the decline of. And then the next thing everyone seemed to be joking about is, where the hell has my libido gone? And it became such a sort of funny topic, and I was like, we actually just need to normalize this conversation, right? Because it's people sort of feel like they can't really talk about it, and then you have like coffees where people are going, well, I do have sex every single day. And you're like, oh, what? And then you go home to your husband, and you're like, oh my God, like we're so far behind, or we've got to sort something out. So I listened to your podcast, Sex.life, and I was like, who better than to have this discussion? This will be awesome. And because we also thought it was really important to talk about our men. And we've got none other than Coach G, who we love, and we've had on the podcast before, and you write lots for us and do a lot of social for us. And we can talk about that sort of thing called menopause as well, because there's stuff that happens to our men. But really, it's probably just to normalize this discussion that I feel that at our age and stage, nobody talks about it as also an impact and follow-on from perimenopause, then onto menopause. So I'll just do a quick intro. This is Morgan Penn. So she is, I know, a certified somatic sexologist, and we will come back to explain what exactly that does and how Morgan got into it. And she's a columnist and a co-host of the entertaining and informative podcast called Sex.life. So for any of you who haven't listened to it, it is absolutely brilliant. You do it with Hayley Sproul, and it's just fantastic. And you actually are so successful, you're about to do season 2. So that's so cool. Morgan's got a background in media, life coaching, body counselling, and sexology, and believes that she should help and how to help and guide people back into their bodies. So, and then we've also got Gareth. Yeah. So Gareth will give us his expert lens on men and their libido, and delve into actually what's happening to men as well in their middle age. So we're curious to know if men experience a menopause, and Gareth will shed some light here, because what I think a lot of men don't realise too is that it's also a health issue, not just performance. He's spent 2 decades plus working in the health and fitness space as a coach, gym owner, and running corporate health programs. He's deep dived into the importance of sleep for not only your physical health, but your mental health. He believes sleep to be one of the key pillars of health, not only to assist in longevity and anti-aging, but also our mental state and resilience, because we all know how grumpy we get when we don't have enough sleep. Gareth has designed and tested several methods that people can apply to get their best night's sleep, and luckily for us is our Comfy sleep ambassador. So because only good things happen in a comfy bed, it makes sense that we host Gareth and Morgan together at the Hub to talk about the 2 vital human needs that are nurtured in bed, sleep and our libido. So thanks for joining us today. So before we get into the questions, Morgan, just explain quickly what a somatic sexologist does and how did you get into it?
It's okay. I didn't know what it was either until I heard it and was like, that's for me. So really, I help people come back into their essential bodies. We're living in a time where we're very time poor, we're very busy, and sex often gets put on the back burner and doesn't get prioritized, and people forget how to feel the subtleties of pleasure, and you actually have to be in the body to really feel that. There's a big element that is mind-based, of course, but the body is actually how we do sex, so we need to be in the body. So soma is the Greek word for body. That's why somatic, I work with the body as well as the mind. And yeah, I'm really passionate about bringing like healthy sexuality into the light and opening discussions and breaking taboos and just normalizing it, because you know, we're probably like all doing it or wishing we were doing it or avoiding doing it, or like something's going on with sex. And libido does seem to be that mysterious, elusive, hard to find thing a lot of the time, but it's in the body. We cultivate it in the body. So that's what I sort of spend my days doing.
Perfect. Good. All right. So do you want to?
Well, we've got a few questions, and we'll just break it up into blocks, and and we can just go through there, and I'm sure we'll have more things to cover. But as Vicky was touching on, we're talking about perimenopause and menopause. Morgan, you know, what happens? Why does our libido go on pause? You know, and I'm sure you'll be able to help here too. You know, what's happening in our bodies to cause the changes? And yeah, we're just going through it now. Yes.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I haven't had a felt sense of it yet, so I sort of speak to it from a bit of a theory place and from direct like experience with my clients. So maybe you can jump in as well as I touch on some things. But yeah, there's the big dip in estrogen and testosterone. So it's hormones really that are changing so much in the body, and this really does have an impact on our sexual function. And when we think about blood flow being a really important piece to arousal and to the genitals, that is something that can be affected during this time. And a big piece which doesn't get talked about that much is vaginal atrophy. And that means that there can be a thinning of the walls, there can be dryness, itching, burning, so like pain during sex. And I think if that has been a pleasure center for you and now becomes a pain center, it's really confusing. And it sets up almost like a fear-pain cycle. And yeah, so there's a lot that is going on, and that can be blocking the libido.
Yeah. And then I suppose on the subject, how about menopause affecting men's libido?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting just hearing you speak about that, because vascular atrophy, which is the same thing, is occurring for men as well. And so we'll see this in the distal ends of people's arms with neuropathy, and we'll see this in feet, but it happens in the genitals as well. And often it can happen there first. And it really is, it's age-related decline, right? So, and I guess to back up one part on that as well, where testosterone comes from. So testosterone for women comes from the adrenal glands. What do we know about the adrenal glands? Cortisol, stress. All right, and so and actually has the same, it's exactly the same. It blunts the testosterone response. So we think about testosterone as the libido hormone because it's such a powerful hormone. But without estrogen, without estradiol, without luteinizing hormone, this whole cascade, and we'll talk about that when we get to sleep, you can't produce enough. And so you're effectively getting suppressed or depressed as life goes on. But the good news is I'm going to talk about how you can actually restore it. Because you can restore it, you can regain it.
Well, that's perfect. Next question is, I'm so tired at the end of the day, and I think we all kind of feel like that. I've nothing left in me to give. You're giving it to your day with, you know, your work, your family, cooking dinner, running around, and then, you've got nothing else to give. What are your thoughts on this? Many of us can relate to this. So I'll ask you
Yeah, well, I mean, this does make sense. We're very busy people and time poor, and we often leave sex to the last thing to do. But we're absolutely pooped by the end of the day. And so I guess what I would say is, like, watch yourself during the day. Watch when you actually feel good or alive, or like there's a little zesty moment where you might actually find a little piece of arousal in your body. Because sometimes you just need to find where the match has been lit and then follow that to like light the fire. So say if you were like, oh, I'm noticing at like 1 p.m. I start to feel a little bit more alive or relaxed, or, you know, I don't know, we've all learned how to work from home. You know, can you whip home, have a late lunch, have a little rendezvous with yourself or with somebody else? You know, like it doesn't have to be this kind of last thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Something else I would say on this though is like we often think, oh, I just don't have the energy for sex. But sexual energy is life force energy, and actually once you start and you get into it and things are flowing and the blood flow and you're breathing, you're actually like oxygenating the body, you come back to life. And if you're having pleasure, then you're going to have oxytocin release, you're actually going to feel good. So I say do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question is also for Gareth is what connection does sleep have to men's libido?
Yeah, so we briefly talked about that just before. Right? So the big thing for me is the quality of your sleep is the quality of your life. And so the better, more well rested you are, the better your body is able to produce the hormones and secrete the hormones that we need to fuel vitality, right? Life force. And it's a really good point. Sexual health and health are not different. And we try to box them into, like, we do this compartmentalized thing where, oh, my heart health is different to my brain health or my mental health, and health is health. Now, we can use different strategies to implement different outcomes, but ultimately, if you're fit, strong, healthy, vital, then all of the things are going to start to come together. So my bit on that is behaviorally, it's not my space to talk about, but exercise. We've heard about blood flow, the importance of blood flow.
Yeah.
What's the number one exercise for blood flow? Cardiovascular exercise. Fitness. So aerobic conditioning, metabolic
I
conditioning,
suppose it's
breathing.
Yeah.
These are crucial for sexual health and for sleep actually as well. And I'm sure we'll have a little chat about apnea, because
Oh God.
that's a massive issue for men. More men suffer from apnea than women, and obviously that infects their sleep quality. So blood flow, we need more exercise, diet, alcohol suppresses hormones. So, and we kind of briefly talked about this last time we spoke.
Yeah, you said it all stems from sleep. You don't have enough sleep. Your energy levels aren't good. You're craving the wrong food. You're not motivated. Lots of things.
And then you're in that nasty little cycle, right?
Yeah.
So keeping inflammation low. We get inflammation and gets more and more difficult to deal with as we age. So being able to look at a diet objectively and go, okay, what are the inputs that are affecting my health that I should think about reducing the impact of those things? So it's high glycemic food, alcohol, and don't be fooled by medication as well. Like some medications can have long-lasting effects on your liver. And one of the things I see with men quite often is they have to go on statins to manage hypercholesteremia. And the adverse effect of that is a reduction in sterols, cholesterol, which is the core compound for what? Testosterone. So you reduce cholesterol with a blood statin, and then what? If a smart doctor, if you're with a smart GP, they'll tell you your testosterone is going to go down. So now you're in that medical cycle. Yeah. So just being aware of those kind of things as well that are a little bit outside of scope.
Yeah.
Oh, and so then just before we move on.
Oh, one more
Oh, yeah,
thing.
no, go.
The big one for that
big
that I
one.
almost totally forgot about is if you're a rise and shine person, all right?
Rise and grind.
But you got to be careful.
Yeah.
You could really say grind around it, okay?
Perfect.
Lots of women on the road.
We should put a term on
So
it. Rise and grind.
if you're a 4 a.m.er, all right, you like to wake up that early in the morning, know this, REM sleep is when you produce the most amount of testosterone. And you know this, all men know this, because when you're younger, what happens in the morning?
Morning glory.
Yeah, morning glory. Yeah, that happens during dream sleep. So your testosterone, and that happens for females as well. So and that's why sometimes you're hornier in the morning than you are in the evening. Right? No, that's what's going on. So when you have a real long, vivid dream sleep, and the way you know that, by the way, is you remember a bit of the dream when you wake, all right? Because you've had such a saturation of dream sleep, you produce more testosterone than any other time. If all the other hormones are in order and you've had a good night's rest. Yeah, so dream sleep is vitally important for testosterone production and libido.
And just before we move on, there was, you and I talked briefly about the top questions, that you get asked all the time, but you said there was one that you get asked every single time, and it was around people feeling like there's some sort of benchmark around the frequency of sex for middle-aged men and women. Like you get asked that all the time. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I know.
I know.
It's the worst. It's the worst because, we don't want to compare these things either. And we're all having a different experience in our sexual bodies, and we're having a different relationship to the person we might be having sex with. And so it really just depends on the person. And I wouldn't even be asking your group of friends, because people might lie about that, because there is still so much taboo around what you're doing sexually or what you're not doing sexually. And there just is no normal benchmark here. This really is about what feels good for you and what you are desiring in your body. And really a big piece is about deciding what is important to you in the sexual landscape. Because for some people, to have sex once a week is a huge success. To have it once a month is a huge success. So it's just different for everybody, and you just have to figure out what feels right for you, not shame yourself, you know, it's just, but also knowing that it can change. And as our bodies change, we desire things differently, and different things, different frequencies, and just like giving space for all of that.
Yeah, we don't. Everyone can remember the old third trimester and the pregnancy stories. Anyway, I won't go into that. Right.
A good answer, though.
Yeah, it's a great answer. So everyone just relax.
Yeah.
Like, there is no benchmark. It's all personal.
Set number.
There's no set number. So just ignore what everybody says. And as you say, they could be lying. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
They could actually be lying. So shush. So now the thing is, what we'd like to talk about is communication. And feeling good, certainly for women, like creates a healthy libido. And there's the school of thought that men need to win to feel good, and women need to feel good in order to win. And I reckon that kind of almost goes across pretty much everything right into the bedroom. How do we align the different triggers like that for men and women, and then make everyone a winner?
Both teams won.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that line of thought, and the first thing that comes up for me is that I think a lot of women actually find it hard to work out what their needs are,
Right.
and then to voice them. So that's a lot of work that I do with my clients, is actually figuring out what are your needs in this space to feel good. What does make you feel good in your body? What makes you feel sexy? What makes you feel aroused? Because it will be different for everybody.
Yeah.
For some people, it might be that they've been able to actually move their body and just go for a little walk every day. For some, it might that they need their partner to give them heaps of compliments, or to feel desired by their partner. But I think the key here is to find out, what you're needing, what you're desiring, what does make you feel good, and then using that information to share that. Because we want to be able to deliver what the other person wants. And I think for men, like if we're talking men and women in this space with that quote, is that men do want to win, and they feel like they've won if they are having a happy partner and they've actually like delivered something. If their partner feels hot for them, well, they've done something right,
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
And we're going to put this question to you.
Yeah.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, I had
Kind
a
of
read
your-
about that, and
yeah.
man, it's actually a bigger question than you realise. So that comes, this evolutionary theory, by the way, you've just thrown that out there. It's first developed by a lady named Joan Ackman, who around the dominance hierarchy, and why men set up societies in the dominance hierarchy. And you cannot break that model. It's a model that we've used for hundreds of thousands of years. It's around protection of the family. It's around going off and feeding, providing from the men's perspective, that is. Provide, hunter, gatherer, and like literally, we've tried so many times to socially engineer this, and we always come back to the same model, because men are genetically designed to feel this way in most instances. You always get outliers and that kind of stuff. So that's where it comes from. And then there's intersexual competition. So men had to fight for the woman in their community, and the most dominant men got to sleep with and have babies with the woman, and the men, the beta males, didn't get to. And so that's where it comes from.
Beta males.
Like it's a real conundrum for men. So we're just talking about implicit, and you kind of described it perfectly, but kind of dumb and simple, right? Like there's a reason why men don't have lingerie, right? We're not the ones that wear lingerie, because we're the ones that like to look at our wives and partners in lingerie. That obviously is not a truism across society, but in general. And so I think that idea that your man wants to win, at least in his social environment, his close personal environment, is actually quite a fundamental theory and idea. So any win is a good one.
Yeah.
Feeling like the provider, feeling like you're doing your bit, feeling like you're measuring up. No man wants to feel like they don't measure up.
Yeah. And as you say, it's come from societal constructs that have been around since caveman days. So good luck in us sort of ever getting around that. Why do you think, Morgan, like we were talking about this, so if we are with our girlfriends, boy, we can have conversations all day long about husbands and sex and bedroom antics and all that stuff, but we would actually never ever have that conversation with our partners? Like, what do you think that's about?
I think there's a few components here. I think one is like just safety. We feel safe with our women. And we do communicate differently as women when we're all together. We're a lot more detail focused. We go into a lot more. Whereas men just want the facts, maybe, I think.
Exactly.
That's probably why you see like large groups of women walking. There's always women walking because we are like flipping solving problems of the world.
Yes,
on those
exactly.
walks. Right.
And I think there's a shared experience as well. You know, like men will never have a felt experience of that real deep experience of menopause, of what really happens in the body.
Yeah.
It's just like being pregnant. They will never have that felt sense. And so I think to be able to share in a way that you will be received where someone may have had that shared experience, you feel way less alone and you feel seen and heard. But I do think that this brings up a bigger societal issue, is that we don't educate our boys properly about menstruation. You know, if we actually did that, we'd normalize those chats, because if those boys then turn into men and go into relationships with women, those women will be mostly likely to be menstruating, and that's every month they're having an experience of this. And if we can teach boys to not be grossed out about it, but to be curious and to actually care for the person that's going through these things, then when it comes to childbirth, they'll be way more well equipped and onto it. And then when it comes to menopause or perimenopause, they've got a way deeper sense of what might be going on for that person. So if we can normalize those kind of conversations early on, I think would be in a better place. But I also think we need to give men like benefit of the doubt and not scaffold them, because I think quite often we think, oh, they don't need to know about that, or during birth, I don't want them to look down there and see that area as a butchery, or there's I've heard some horrible things.
I know, it's terrible.
But it's like, this is a body, and like we've come from bodies, and it's a really important thing to just normalize it, and it doesn't have to be sexual all the time. That is a pleasure portal and a birth portal. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, can we just have the full body spectrum experience, and can we talk about it? Let's learn more about men as well. Like, we're all having a different experience in the body. So if we can, just start having these open, vulnerable conversations, we will be in a better place together as a society.
It's also, I think, like, sometimes it would almost feel embarrassing to have the conversation with your partner, because you're not really, as you say, we don't actually know what our own real needs are. And so then it's like, I mean, I can imagine trying to have this conversation with my husband. I'll probably just be blushing the whole time, just going, oh, I'm so embarrassed. Whereas I'd have it in a room full of women in a heartbeat, probably because we can all have that sense of relationship. So how do we get past that embarrassment of like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's a bigger communication piece, right? Yeah. And it has to start with the small things in relationships where you so often hold back because we just think, oh no, it doesn't really matter, or he's going to think I'm needy, or I am embarrassed. But actually, the more that we hold things back, the more electrical charge there is to them. So actually, if you can bring them into the light, it means that it's there, it's out of your body as well. And when we think about libido, the more that you can share and get out of your body, the more that you're not holding back or suppressing or harboring feelings like this person doesn't understand me, or, we actually all want to feel seen and heard and supported. So yes, it's scary, it's hard to have these conversations, but the payoffs are huge.
Yeah.
Well, how about, we've got a question here too for Gareth. Is it for guys as well? Easier for guys to talk to each other, or?
That was really well said, first of all.
Yeah.
So I agree, I 100% wholeheartedly agree. I think for the men's thing, well, first I'm 43, so I'm caught between, I'm 2/3 old school New Zealand, 1/3 new school New Zealand. So I'm caught in between, and I'm ex-military as well. And there was no way when I was in the military, anyone would have dared talk about erectile dysfunction or, loss of intimacy with their partner.
Yeah.
So you would just be ostracised. And it comes from that, for me, for men in New Zealand specific, is a cultural thing for men in New Zealand. Number 8, Y mentality and tall poppy syndrome. Those two things drive so much of New Zealand men's behaviour. And they're still ingrained, and there's a little underbelly of it still. And the further out you go into like rural New Zealand, the rawer it still is. The realness is still there with those kind of philosophies. So until we have the conversations, open it up, make it normalize it, you know, which is going to take more and more like Kiwi men to voluntarily walk towards it. It's going to be difficult. And then in terms of like having those conversations with your partner, you know, you're not going there until someone else walks there first. You know, no one wants to walk the path first.
Yeah. So be brave.
Be brave. Yep.
Be brave. So should we talk about some emotional barriers? So you want to ask?
What have we got here? Does libido, this is for you, Coach G, does libido become more emotionally driven as men age and not simply physical driver?
Yeah, look, that's back to the stress thing, right? So stress blunts testosterone for both sexes. So, you know, you talk about age and stage. I love that saying. So what happens when you turn, you know, late 20s, early 30s? What are you planning on normally doing at that time in your life? Probably thinking about starting a family in general. And then once baby comes along, what are you not doing? You're not sleeping. But it's also that time in your life where you're trying to crunch financially, buy the house, and you're chasing the dream, you know, the white picket fence, the 2 kids, you know, keeping up with the Joneses.
Mortgage free.
Yep. And all of a sudden, you've got so much more responsibility and you've got the weight of your shoulders on, you know. And so that acceleration, that age-related decline, that's now being accelerated. So instead of 3 to 5% a decade, you're now at 10, 15% a decade. And that's why we see like some women and men start to experience the symptoms really early in their late 30s. Because all you have to do is rewind 10 years and go, well, what was your life like the last 10 years? And you see pretty clearly, maybe there's a lot of alcohol, maybe there's a lot of responsibility professionally, maybe they had kids early, and you can you can pick it, unless there's some sort of gene-related mutation that's driven that. But for the most part, it's just coming from their lifestyle, accelerating that aging process.
So what are the tips for, you know, what should we be doing? Just
Yeah, so I can't talk for, I can kind of talk for women, but for men particularly,
to help them.
the key there is the big 3: sleep, exercise, nutrition. All right. So there is no secret here, by the way. It's just sleep, exercise, and nutrition. So those are core tenets of longevity. So if you can maintain good control around those 3 things, and it's the 80-20 rule, you don't have to be perfect, but you have to be consistent. And then what you'll blunt, all right, someone will suppress some of the effects of that acceleration of decline, even through stressful periods, because resilience is not just about the aversion of stress, all right? You can override stress. That's what the whole cold therapy thing is, right? So you can blunt some of the inflammation in your body using different strategies like nutrition, like exercise, like cold therapy, like breath work. And so it's about being consistent, getting those behaviors into your lifestyle early in your life, because you don't want to show up at 40, even though you can start it and it will be effective, but you don't want to show up at 40 and then start, you know, start early.
A question for you, Morgan. So for us in our aging on that way, everything's physically heading south.
Gravity.
Gravity. We all talk about the mano belly, so we've all started to put on weight. It's a bit harder to lose it. So we actually are not feeling, you know, hot and sexy like we probably did in our 20s. So how is it possible to feel sexy in your body when your hormones and everything's working like up against you?
Yeah, I know that's such a good question, and I love that the emphasis is on feel, because we do get so obsessed with the aesthetic side of it, but really what does matter is how you feel in your own skin and in your own body. And so I think it's about the subtleties, like the little things actually, like what makes you feel really good. Do you enjoy a hot shower? Can you actually take a moment to just breathe while you're in there and feel every little trickle on every little part of your body? And then I think there is this piece around like deep compassion helps with self-love. I mean, I love self-love, but there's such this bullshit like rah-rah self-love movement at the moment. And to me, that's not useful. Like, to me, self-love is about those little things and having compassion for where you find your body in this moment and claiming that as yours, as this vessel that may have had babies and been through stages and had pleasure because you've been loved by somebody, and now it's having this experience of life. This is the human journey, and claiming that and knowing that this may pass as well, you know. But I think touching yourself is really important in that journey of change and just knowing, because sometimes we don't even know what our size is. And I think I deal with a lot of clients that have a lot of anxiety. And when I'm working with the body, I often say, just touch your frame, like feel how big you are right now. You're like blowing out like in your mind about life and what's going on. But if you can actually just come back to your body, what's happening in here, what can you feel, you can have a sense of actually it feels okay. I feel safe in my body. I can feel, you know, the carpet on my toes, and that feels good. So yeah, I think on a sexual level, to try and incite the sexy, firstly, can we find almost like a neutrality, you know, of that reclamation, this is me, this is my body, and then build on that. So if you want to go wild, which I highly recommend, it would be like dancing nude in front of the mirror. I know that's probably out of so many people's comfort zones, but shit, it's good.
Yeah.
Like,
Except if your 9-year-old comes in and goes, "What the hell are you doing?"
well, it's like that's a great learning piece, you know. I'm being free in my body.
It's normal.
Yeah, this is all good. I'm enjoying my body. Want to dance?
Come join me.
You know. Yeah, I think self-massage, I think if it's lingerie, like think about what used to make you feel sexy, because that's normally still a pathway. Yeah.
I suppose because after we've had babies and stuff, boy, you're going into all the like G-strings are like something that happened back when you hold up these things, you're like, geez, is that actually like, why would you even wear anything? But I couldn't imagine doing that like after kids and all the trauma that's happened down here, to then go and like stick something like tiny and then walk around. Like it just doesn't feel the same, Morgan. Like you know what I mean? So
I do.
Lingerie for a middle-aged woman.
Look, we have to absolutely bring that in.
Yeah.
And there's some beautiful lingerie out there that's like not that skinny, you know, that can cover more parts, you know.
Yeah.
But I think it is about, you know, being really curious about yourself. What does feel good, and exploring that, because it's worth it. Anything that's going to make you feel good and sexy. If you're feeling good and sexy out in the world, that's going to show as well. You're going to be glowy. You're going to be shiny. It's not just about what's happening in the bedroom.
Yeah.
More self-confident.
Yeah.
All of that. Yeah.
So just to finish up, because my God, I feel like I've got like 600 million other questions to ask, which is such a pity on time. Gareth, what advice do you think you could give to men to help support their partner through these changes, and help? What can they also do to help the connection piece again? That sort of intimacy that we often talk about, it we feel like has waned over the course of the many years. Like, what would your advice be from a male perspective?
I can speak from my own relationship. Open dialogue. So Rebecca's my wife. We talk. We have like a get it all out session.
Right.
Every couple of months, and it's just sit and
Just
listen,
free
mate.
for all.
Take it on, but we, without giving away too many secrets, we're quite sexual beings though, so we need that part of our life to be. And so you've got two people together who are like found the right kind of connect. What do you call it? Behaviors. Like we've both got the same.
But imagine when V starts to hit.
Yeah, well, it's already starting to happen.
Do you know what I mean?
So,
and then now you're going to be dealing with this change.
So fortunately for me, I've had experience through coaching clients and having watched people go through it. So strategies are like, we're probably going to go HRT straight away because I'm open to those kind of things.
Yeah.
And not allow her to suffer in silence, because if it's bad for. So what I observed through sleep coaching actually is that women who are have a higher androgenic output, higher hormones in general, suffer the most, because they experience the largest drop, because they had a higher threshold genetically. When they go into perimenopause, it's brutal, because they go from here down to here. Whereas if you had lower hormone outputs and you go from here to here, it's quite subtle. So that, how some people experience it real differently and more intensely. Yeah. So people who go from here to here, they're the ones that just like the night sweats and the evil bloating and the brain fog and just all of it starts to come like groundswell. Yeah. So, if I observe any of those kind of things, I'll be like, right,
You'll be on to
HRT,
it.
man. Let's deal with this.
Or
you
just
know.
wake up in the night and surreptitiously like stick a patch on it.
And,
She won't even
yeah,
know it's
just
there.
for clarity, HRT is hormone
Consent.
replacement therapy.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
And the male equivalent, that's TRT, which is testosterone replacement therapy.
Yeah.
There's also supplements you can use. I'm actually not aware of the female one, so I won't speak out of turn, but males, we can use things like boron. So boron is really interesting. It's something I'm playing with at the moment for myself. Boron's it's a metal, so it's like iron. It's supposed to be in the diet like copper, but in small amounts. But in larger amounts, it's non-toxic. It actually blunts something called SHBG, and it's a horrible thing. So SHBG, SBHG is sex-binding hemoglobin, steals testosterone from your body. All right. So if you have noticed or observed a big drop, and it goes up when you're stressed. All right. So it's like a little scavenger. It goes in, grabs free-form testosterone, not reproductive testosterone. So this isn't if it doesn't, it actually improves sexual function. It's its job. But it steals free testosterone. Now the problem with that is sarcopenia, the loss of muscle. Yeah. So I take boron to suppress SHBG, which I've got high amounts of. So that's one. Boron's a really good one. And there's a myriad of different supplements now that are proving to be pretty effective. So if you don't want to go down the hormone replacement route, there are alternatives out there that you can talk to your GP about that are pretty effective now.
For men.
For men, phosphatidylserine is another one for both sexes. So phosphatidylserine reduces cortisol.
So we'll pop this up onto the end of the
definitely.
podcast.
Yeah.
And what about you, Morgan? Like advice to help women and men, like helping tips to sort of help reconnect. How to bring back that intimacy that sort of these days it's very transactional. Who's got the kids? What time? Who's eating dinner? When are you home? What are some top tips just to get our way back?
Yes. Well, I'm always going to be an advocate for communication and that sort of thing that you're having with your wife, that get it all out is really important. I use a framework which is probably just a bit more like, kinder to my clients to ease them in, is relationship check-ins. And it's the same thing. But, it's just you can ask the same 5 questions every time. And one of them, can be like, how are you feeling in your sexual body this week? So you actually get a little bit of a gauge. Another question could be like, how can I love you better next week? Which will help with sexy times. So you can pick your 5 together, and it's just the same thing. You don't make it a chore. You just like do it while you're cooking dinner together or something like that, going for a walk, and it's just you just get on the same page. It means nothing gets missed and nothing boils up to an explosion. But then I think as well, it is about, and I know a lot of people cringe with this, scheduling intimacy.
Do you reckon? Not like a passion killer.
No, I think it's the best thing ever. I think not scheduling sex, scheduling intimacy. So there's no pressure on anything
So it's not
sexual.
It's intimacy.
Yeah, it's quality time. It could just be a vulnerable chat. It could be holding hands. It could be a massage. It could be going for a walk. But it is about dedicated time. I mean, you think about like going to the gym. If you didn't schedule that in or plan for it, the chance of that happening,
Speaking my language.
it
doesn't happen.
Spontaneously doesn't happen because something else will be a bit more important, or I don't really feel like it. So it is about, if you're prioritizing that for a union,
Makes sense.
schedule it in. And I think, what I see tends to happen is that if you're doing it regularly, you remember how good it feels, you're enjoying it, so then there's actually a higher chance of doing it spontaneously.
Yes.
Because if you're actually out of the loop, it just goes on, and it can drag out for a longer amount of time. And you kind of forget that you love it, that it's a good time, that you feel great the next day, you feel more connected to the partner. So I think there is huge benefits to just blocking out quality, intimate time.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That was
Yeah,
perfect.
that's really helpful,
Yeah,
especially for
something to
us in
think
our
about.
age and stage.